Hi, welcome to America Uncovered. I'm your host, Chris Chappell. So, here's something all Americans can agree on. Separating children from their parents for a long period of time is a problem. The American Academy of Pediatrics says it can cause irreparable harm. Even President Trump doesn't like it.
I don't want children taken away from parents.
Then why, you ask, is Trump's anti-immigrant fear-mongering driving him to set up concentration camps for immigrant children?
I know they're being marched away to showers, or they're being told they are, just like the Nazis had said that they were taking people to showers and then they never came back.
Yes, the Trump administration is rounding up all immigrant children and killing them in concentration camp gas chambers. This may shock you, but a lot of media are spinning the story, and what's happening at the border right now is a little more complicated than that. Looks like a job for America Uncovered. According to the Department of Homeland Security, about 2,000 children were separated from adults illegally entering the United States in 6 weeks. Though last week, President Trump signed an executive order changing the policy to now detain alien families together, which is great news for alien families like the Tanners. Just to be clear, this is happening to illegal immigrants, not all immigrants. That doesn't make it right necessarily, it's just a distinction the media should make, but often don't. So, was tearing children away from their parents some kind of new Trump anti-illegal immigration policy? Well, like I said, it's complicated. One of the first things Trump did when he became president last year was sign this executive order focused on enhancing border security. Besides more Border Patrol agents, it ended catch and release. Catch and release was not so much a policy, but a political term describing something that happens at the border. It refers to when border agents catch people for illegally crossing the border, but then release them from detention for any number of reasons. To be clear, most people who are caught crossing the border illegally are deported. Catch and release applies mostly to children, families, and asylum seekers. And they're not 100% released either. It means they're released from custody and allowed to stay in the U.S. while their case is being processed for either deportation or asylum. But once they're released from custody, it's harder for the U.S. government to keep track of them. Like when I come home after a long day of work and toss my keys on the bed. I will never, ever find those keys again, even if I search for hours, until one morning I wake up with a sore spot on my face. But Trump's executive order last year to end catch and release meant that if an alleged family was caught illegally entering the United States, the adults would be prosecuted for breaking the law, instead of the whole alleged family being released into the U.S. Why do I say alleged family? Well, according to the New York Times, some of these illegal immigrants admitted to posing falsely with children who are not their own, and Border Patrol officials say that such instances of fraud are increasing. Part of the reason people were taking children on the dangerous border crossing was they believed it would cause the authorities to release them from custody sooner. How much fraud is there? According to numbers from the Department of Homeland Security, there have been 191 cases so far in 2018. That's a lot, and it's way more than last year. But still, fraud makes up less than 1% of these family cases. So, Trump wanted to stop catch and release. His policy was simple: criminally prosecute all adults who illegally cross the border. Before, the majority of these cases would be heard in immigration court, which is civil and not criminal. Now, in many cases, the process is quick. The adults, along with the kids, are simply deported. But in some cases, the families apply for political asylum, and processing those applications can take years. So, there's a problem. What do you do with the kids? Fortunately, government bureaucracy gives us an answer. Since the adults are being prosecuted as criminals for illegally crossing the border, they're in the custody of the U.S. Marshals and will be sent to federal prison instead of immigration detention. U.S. Marshals are not in the business of looking after children, and federal prison is no place for kids, so the kids are given to another government agency, Health and Human Services, and they set up these wonderful tents for the kids to stay in. Reminds me of my days at summer camp, only instead of boondoggle, there's barbed wire. But summer camp is short for these kids. thanks to something called the Flores settlement. In theory, they can only be held there for 20 days. Then the kids are released, usually to relatives inside the United States, which, depending on the relative, can be great or it can be worse than the summer camps. But it's the detention of children that makes this whole issue complicated. Trump, looking to take a tough stance on illegal immigration, orders strict enforcement of the law. And it seems to work, at least at first. According to data from U.S. Customs and Border Protection, there's a huge drop in the number of people detained at the border, the lowest total since 1971. But immigration is on the rise again, and this time there are more asylum seekers than there have been in 20 years. And yet, many people still blame the deporter-in-chief. No, I'm actually talking about Obama. That's right, back in the day, Obama was called the deporter-in-chief. Obama actually deported way more people per year than Trump has so far. Outdone by Obama? Sad. And let's just say, Obama wasn't too fond of children crossing the border.
Do not send your children to the borders. If they do make it, they'll get sent back. More importantly, they may not make it.
Under Obama, there were cases of illegal immigrant parents and children being separated from each other. But for most of Obama's presidency, the policy was keep families together in immigration detention. And the media smeared him for it. Obama's Secretary of Homeland Security said they were committed to family detention because it was a deterrent. Though I don't understand how it's a deterrent. I mean, they used the same great summer camps as the Trump administration does. But in 2015, the Obama administration was sued. A federal judge demanded the release of children who were detained, partly because the judge didn't like the conditions in the summer camps, but also because it violated the 1997 Flores settlement. Broadly speaking, the Flores settlement requires that children be given clean and humane conditions while in detention and then get released quickly. So given that the Obama administration could not keep detaining the children even in immigration detention, it settled on the catch and release strategy, releasing the children and the adults together. Like Trump, the Obama administration struggled to deal with the surge of illegal immigrants, and border agencies didn't have the resources or legal tools to deal with them. The biggest challenge is illegal immigration has changed over the years. In the past, illegal aliens were mainly single brown guys. No, the kind who were looking to actually do some work. But over the past several years, we've seen more families and unaccompanied minors, especially from what are called the Northern Triangle nations, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. And they're traveling up through Mexico and across the southern U.S. border. Why are so many people coming from El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras? To seek refuge from violence, forced gang recruitment, and extortion, as well as poverty and lack of opportunity. So if they're seeking asylum, why would they cross the border illegally? Why don't they just apply for asylum legally at the border? Well, some actually do. But with the surge in border crossings, seeking asylum is getting harder. One of the issues is that current U.S. asylum laws recognize refugees as people persecuted by their governments. That doesn't necessarily include persecution from, for example, drug gangs that act like warlords, but aren't technically part of the government. But even if U.S. law were changed to expand asylum, it might not matter much. In the past 10 years, there's been a 1,700% increase in asylum claims. So there's already a giant backlog of cases that need to be processed. And when those asylum seekers enter the country illegally with children, the only legal choices currently available to border agents are to release them into the U.S. or to tear the families apart while the cases are being processed. Border agents are not allowed to send families back if they claim asylum, although there have been a few reports of this happening. Now, in addition to Trump's executive order stopping family separations, a federal judge has also ruled that the U.S. must stop separating families at the border and reunite families within 30 days. Homeland Security says that so far, more than 500 children have been reunited with their families. Although if they're applying for asylum, that most likely means they will be reunited in those family summer camps. So while this issue might be resolved, the underlying complex problem is still there. That's why it's helpful to have an open debate about these issues so a middle ground can be found. But when some media frame it as you either want to open the borders to invading hordes of criminals or you're a child-killing Nazi, there is no middle ground. But maybe we can find some thoughtful, reasonable solutions in the comments section below. I hear YouTube is good for that. How would you deal with the illegal immigration crisis? And remember to subscribe for more episodes. And if you like reporting that looks at all sides of an issue, support America Uncovered by going to the crowdfunding website Patreon. Link is below. Once again, I'm your host, Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.